Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. It is Brad, but not John. Instead, I have, and hopefully I'll be able to turn this up right here, and I'll be able to say good morning to Bill Eigel. Bill, do you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Bill,
thanks for having me, Brad.
Yeah, Bill, you are the fill-in John Combest this morning. Do you feel honored like you should?
I feel incredibly honored, and I feel a ton of pressure right now to fill John's shoes.
They are size light 19, so that'll give you an idea of the problem you're going to have. Okay, and you hear me okay then? Everything's good?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Great. Okay. The way we do the show, Bill, and first off, let me give you my background with Bill. I think this is interesting. First off, we're having Bill on here because of the fact he's running for county executive, and you can't even file for that officially till what, next year, correct? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, end of February. So we still got a few months to go before the race officially begins.
The interesting thing is, I have known Bill for what, 20 years now? Has it been 20 years? When did you start?
I think I've only been in the political arena for 10 years now, I think. And we actually worked together on Skylight stuff, didn't we?
Yes, you ran.
That's right. That's right. I forgot about that. Yes.
When did you start your Skylight company? What year was that?
I purchased it in 2007. So that was, I had just gotten out of the military and moved back here to St. Charles. This is where Amanda's family is from. And have been here ever since. So, yeah, that was, going on. I can't believe that was almost 20 years ago.
That's what I'm saying.
18 years ago? Wow.
Yeah, 18 years ago. And you did advertising with us for several years until you sold the business going to politics, which I thought was interesting.
It's a terrible decision on my part.
What year was that again?
That was 2016 is when I ran for the Senate the first time and was elected for the eastern half of St. Charles County.
2016. Okay. The reason I've invited Bill, and I will be upfront and say that on Thursday we're going to have Steve Ellman. On Friday we're going to have Jason Law. And the reason I decided to do it is because John is busy remodeling his house and he can't leave his house. He's stuck there with the remodelers and things like that. He's got to supervise all the remodeling at his house. So I don't like to do the show solo, and yet I like to have entertaining, fun, fast-moving, fast-brained people on the air with me, and that's Bill Eigel, right, Bill?
Well, fast-moving. I don't know if I would agree with fast-moving. I'm not very fast-moving at all.
Okay, now, what we did was, when I set this up, and I'm going to do the same thing with you, with Steve Ellman, and the same thing with Jason Law, is you are going to do the John Combest Top 3. Now, I gave you the ground rules. You don't necessarily have to go to johncombest.com and pull one of his stories, because even though he's not here today, I know he's done it because he brags about the fact that he's never missed a day like in 24 years every single day. But I'm going to bring in, and you know the drill, you probably heard this before, I'm going to bring in this guy. You hear this guy right here?
I'm Casey Kasem.
You hear him okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're going to start with Bill Eigel's top 3, and we start with...
In third place...
Well, I did a little bit, I did deviate a little bit from your ground rules. So I tried to pick because I was researching this last night. I did homework last night for this show, Brad. That's how serious I am actually taking this. So it wasn't up last night. So I actually just picked my own top 3, and I picked one federal, national story. I picked one state level story, and I picked one local story. So my number 3 is going to be my national story, and that is the updates with the government shutdown in Washington, D.C. Everybody's watching it, right? Like, oh, my gosh, the federal government has shut down. Will our lives as American citizens come to an end? Well, if you recall, over the weekend, President Trump announced that SNAP benefits would be cut in half for the month of November due to ongoing disagreement and gridlock in the U.S. Senate. Now, Brad, you know, I'm a guy that's actually familiar with gridlock in Senate chambers, right? Like, I know all about this. This is my thing. So my top 3, my number 3 is just talking about where is the government shutdown going to go? And I'm going to make a prediction on your show this morning, Brad, on the exact day that I think the shutdown is going to end. You're going to have this in recording, and we'll see if I'm correct moving forward. But The short story is my takeaway from where we're at right now is it's a very interesting story because right now, with the legislative branch in Washington, D.C. not doing anything, you effectively have the executive and the judicial branch doing their job for them. The president has kept most of the major government programs rolling. Social Security is still going. The military is still functioning. The VA is still operational. We were able to keep our welfare programs like SNAP benefits open for an entire month. And even now in the second month, it's going to be halfway. It's going to be still going halfway. So the courts have intervened this weekend, and the courts are now trying to tell the president how to spend the money, directing him to put more money into the SNAP program. So it's interesting to watch this unfold. That I think the biggest takeaway I'm getting from the government shutdown is the legislative branch, the Congress, is actually in danger of becoming irrelevant to the process of running the country. So, hopefully the Democrats are going to come around and open the government back up. But my prediction on the day that this shutdown will end is November 16th. So right now is November 4th. My prediction is the shutdown will end on November 16th because that is the 47th day of the shutdown. And I think that's going to be the moment that we see the shutdown come to an end. So there you have it right there. November 16th will be the end of the government shutdown in Washington, D.C.
Do you really think it's because it's 47? Do you really think that?
I got a feeling, man. I'm telling you, I got a feeling. I'm starting to see with the additional pressure now starting to go up with the SNAP benefits. I could see everything coming together right around the 16th. And I get this feeling the 16th is going to be the day, the 47th day of the shutdown.
Now, Bill, let me ask you something, because I think what's interesting what you said is for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, the House of Representatives hasn't been in session until sometime in September. Isn't that the correct thing? Haven't they been gone for a long time now? Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. So they're stuck. They're stuck up there.
You being an Air Force veteran and your wife being an Air Force veteran, I've always found it interesting that when we get into these shutdowns, that we have the essential people still working and the non-essential people. My question to you, Bill, is a guy who's been in government and wants to be back in government, is why do we have non-essential employees to begin with? You're laughing already, aren't you?
That's a great question. I think that there's almost a little bit of strategy here on the part of the president, because this shutdown is functioning like a stress test for the federal government. And we're actually getting a really good idea of what the American public can do with and what the American public can do without. So, when it comes to certain things, we know the American public can't do without military service, right? We can't do without an operational military. So that was never on the table as far as dismantling as part of the government shutdown. We know the American public is not going to tolerate a stop in our Social Security benefits and our other major welfare programs. So that was never on the table either. In fact, even though the government is quote unquote shut down, all of the biggest programs are still operational. So the parts that are shut, actually, you know what's shut down? The IRS is shut down. The IRS actually owes me a tax refund, and I can't get it right now because the IRS is shut down. So I'm willing to take that, though, because I think the IRS being shut down is a very good thing.
Well, it's interesting. Also, the government agency that governs us, the FCC, everything's done on the internet right now. We had a report. We have quarterly reports we have to file with the FCC, which was due on October 10th. And as of October 1st, the FCC website essentially put up a sign that say, hey, we're not home anymore. Check back later. And then I've got another filing, which was due Sunday, November 2nd, which we can't file. And I called the guy that does all my technical filings for me, and he says, hey, just going to have to wait till they go back in go into session. Our FCC comes back in line. I go, well, the problem is I'm missing a deadline. He says, nobody's missing any deadlines.
That's right. There are no deadlines.
Right.
This is America as it was supposed to be.
Right. Okay. Bill, you ready for number 2?
I'm ready for number 2.
Here's number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
All right. So my subject for the state level story is data centers. I know that you and John have talked about data centers, but it just came out yesterday that the data center special interest group has started a political action committee here in the state of Missouri to advocate for data centers, and it's almost certain to engage in political elections, and I would guess political primaries. This is becoming, Brad, as you know, a major state-level topic of political discussion here in the state of Missouri. We just had a conversation about data centers in St. Charles City, and of course that was shot down and not approved. But there's actually data centers that are projected to go in Warren County. There's a big data center that's projected to go in Jefferson County. And there's a lot of folks talking about whether or not these data centers are a good idea for the state of Missouri. My take on it is that in the current format that we're authorizing data centers, it's not a good deal for ratepayers or anybody that pays any kind of utility bill in the state of Missouri. To kind of put that in perspective, for the city of St. Charles, the data center they were going to put in the city of St. Charles was literally going to double the power consumption of the entire city of St. Charles and double the water consumption of the entire city of St. Charles from that one data center. Now, here's where it gets to become a bad deal for the taxpayer. The companies who are major consumers of electricity or utilities or water, things of that nature, by state law, get a huge discount on every kilowatt hour, every gallon of water that they buy from local utilities. They get a huge discount by state law. It's actually in the state code that they get a discount. But the infrastructure that will be required in order to build the new power lines or the new power plants or the new water treatment plants to provide that will be shared evenly with all the other ratepayers in the area. So you and I are going to pay an even cost to build the new infrastructure for these data centers, and then the kilowatt hours that the data center consumes, they get a huge discount on that kilowatt hours that you and I don't get. So as it stands right now, what happens, the impact is exactly what Josh Hawley has been raising as a red flag, which is, wait a minute, our utility bills are going up, but we don't get the same discounts that these big consumers get. To put in perspective how much energy consumption that one data center in St. Charles County would have required, Missouri as a state uses about 67 million kilowatt hours per year. That one data center in St. Charles City could have used up to 1 million kilowatt hours. That's just one smaller data center. So if you have a huge data center that's 10 times the size of that out in Warren County and another data center 10 times that down in Jefferson County, you could be talking about a 10 to 15% increase in the overall power consumption of our entire state. That's going to require a lot of infrastructure, and the ratepayers, the residential homes, are going to have to pay that evenly, even though these corporate entities are getting a huge discount. So in that environment, I am 100% opposed to any new data centers that are going to make our utility rates go up. But they are now engaging in the political arena, have set up their own political action committee, and their intention is to fight this with the public in the coming election cycles.
Well, Bill, isn't this also almost like a NIMBY kind of thing? Because there was a story that John and I talked about just yesterday about the fact that the Rush Island plant, which was Ameren's plant down in Jefferson County, they've closed that one. Now they're going to put in they're proposing to put in a natural gas-fired plant, essentially to put more power into the grid. And the people down there are saying, we don't want that. I mean, the problem we have is that you've lived here in and out of the St. Louis area for pretty much your entire life, correct?
My entire adult life outside of military service.
Okay. When's the last time we had a new power plant built in the state of Missouri in your lifetime? And I already know the answer to this, and you know what the answer is?
I don't think we have.
Exactly. The whole point of it is, and that what I look at this is a global thing, is that we're in a race. We used to be, remember way back when we used to be in the race with the Russians for the space race and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Now we're in a race with the Chinese, and the Chinese are building AI data centers all over the place, and they're plunking down coal-powered plants right next to the new places. When are we going to get to the point where we can move past this NIMBY thing, which to a certain extent, aren't you sort of being a NIMBY kind of guy by saying no new data centers?
So really good question. So let me kind of set up my answer in a couple of ways. One, you mentioned the Rush Island power center or power plant actually shut down. The reason that plant shut down, the Cindy O'Loughlin's of the world will say, well, it's because of regulations and trial attorneys or EPA or whatever it is. That's not true. The reason that closed down is because the power consumption of Missouri has actually been dropping over the past 10 years. 10 years ago, excuse me, 15 years ago, we were using 80 million kilowatt hours per year in this state. Now it's down to $67 million kilowatt hours. So the reason we lost that one plant is because we just didn't have the power requirements that we had before. That's why that shut down. It didn't have anything to do with, lawsuits or regulations, none of that stuff. That was shut down because our power consumption dropped in the state of Missouri. And we still get about 10% of that 60 million or 67 million kilowatt hours from other states. So we're importing it from places like Illinois or other areas that are not named Missouri. That's a good idea. So to your point, Brad, I actually have been proposing that we do need to invest in new power plants. I'm a big proponent of nuclear power plants. In particular, I'd like to see some more of these small modular nuclear reactors that are the latest technology in nuclear power generation. And I'd like to see those not only built in the state of Missouri. I actually envision St. Charles County as a place where we could manufacture those small nuclear reactors for other areas that will want to see them. How this relates, there's an interesting way that answer relates to data centers. I've said that the deal that we have for data centers right now is a bad one for ratepayers, and we should not approve any data centers under the idea that we're going to have to share the cost with these guys, and then they're going to get a huge discount on power. There are some data centers being built right now in the state of Tennessee, but it's different than the data center situations that they're building in Missouri, because when Google's actually building these data centers in Tennessee, Google not only built the data center, they built 2 small modular nuclear reactors associated with the data center and made sure they were paying for all of the infrastructure upgrades that would be required to not only fuel the data center, but actually provide additional power to the local areas and the people that lived in those areas. So the people in Tennessee are getting a way better deal than the people in Missouri are when it comes to how the data centers are being proposed. So I'm a big proponent of looking for more power generation so that we're energy independent in this state. But putting a bunch of data centers in here and asking all our residents to pay for that upgrade, I'm with Josh Hawley on this one. We got to be asking these questions. I don't think that's the right way to go.
But Bill, knowing your politics like I do, you're probably a big wind and solar guy too, right?
Not so much. I've really not been a wind and solar guy. Remember a few years ago when Texas had all those wind farms and they had a really cold winter and it shut down their power grid for 3 or 4 months in the wintertime? Yeah, I've come to realize that's really not the way to go. I'm a nuclear guy.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up, because I've talked about those small package plants as well too, and it's amazing the technology behind those. And some of them they're talking about putting into where they could power a subdivision, where essentially they put one of the small package plants in a subdivision, like in St. Charles County. The entire subdivision could be powered locally by that plant. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
Ready for number one, the big number one,
Ready
Bill?
for number one.
Here we go.
The number one.
That's your cue.
Oh, okay. The number one. I thought that was it. All right. All right. So I came up with a St. Charles related headline. And, one of the big themes, I know we're going to talk about this some more, is St. Charles growth, right? Is St. Charles growing? How much is it growing? Where does that sit? I've been making the case that St. Charles County is on the verge of what I would describe as real stagnation. And I went back and I actually did some research on this. In 2007, and I think you know why that year is important, St. Charles County was not only one of the fastest growing counties in the state, but it was the fastest growing on a percentage basis. In fact, out of 116 counties, St. Charles County on a percentage basis of growth was the fourth fastest growing county anywhere in the state of Missouri. Number 4 out of 116. But as we've gone from 2007 to approaching where we are today, our ranking amongst all the counties has actually been slipping. In fact, it dropped down to 7th by 2020. And in 2025, we've dropped from 7th down to 17th out of 116 counties. So the growth mechanism that St. Charles has been benefiting from, which is taking all this population from St. Louis and St. Louis City, is starting to really grind to a much slower pace than it was before. And of the growth that we do have, we've approved just in the past 15 years more than 9,000 permits for apartment complexes here in St. Charles County. So a third of the growth that we've seen between 2020 and 2025 is going into apartment complexes. And these are the same apartment complexes that so many folks are frustrated about because it is changing the entire feel and demographics of St. Charles County. So I think that's why the apartment issue, the growth issue are going to be the major themes over the next 12 months. And as the data is showing, our growth rate is dramatically slowing. And I really do believe that if we don't start doing some exciting things here in the county, we are risking serious long-term stagnation.
Now, you said 9,000 apartments. You're talking 9,000 apartment units, not actually buildings,
yes.
correct? Okay.
9,000 apartment units,
okay.
correct.
Yes.
Oh, and it's accelerating. From 2010 to 2019, we built 5,000 apartment complexes. And then from 21 to 24, we built another 4,000. So the pace of apartments has almost doubled here in St. Charles County over the past 4 years. I think that's why it's got so many people's attention.
Well, and to a certain extent, being a guy that's lived in St. Charles County a long time myself, I think some of the places they put them in, like, for example, that complex right there that's off of Mid Rivers Mall Drive across the street from what is the Farm and Home and sort of tucked back behind, I think there's a Rax and an AutoZone. You know what I'm talking about, right? Right off of Central School Road. Okay, that one is like shoehorned into a little tiny piece of property. It's like, okay, what's the deal with that? You know what I'm saying?
They had to build the parking garage below the apartment
complex.
Yes,
there's no parking lots there, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not the Central West End in the city. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is St. Charles County. Bill, you know what? You've done a great job. Now, what we normally do is we're going to go into the B block, and if you could hold on, we'll play a couple commercials here, and then you and I will talk about more specifically about your run for county executive, and also I want to revisit something that I talked to you on the air several months back about the B-2 bomber, which I'm fascinated with because, Bill, a lot of people don't know this, you have personal hands-on experience, and I literally mean hands-on experience.
Hands-on.
Yes,
literally.
With the B-2 bombers. Okay, we'll take a break. We'll be back.